Let us discuss chapter 2 and chapter 4 of paper 2. In chapter 2, we will discuss demographic profile of India. Demographic profile of India. In chapter 4, we will discuss growth of anthropology. Growth of anthropology in India. In our syllabus, in second chapter, we have mainly 4 questions. Topic wise, in our syllabus, total 3 topics are there. They are factors influencing growth and structure of the population, growth and structure of the population, second one is racial elements in India, third one is linguistic elements in India. But actually in racial elements we have 2 topics mainly. They are Guha's classification and Risley's classification. That's a total 4 topics we have in our syllabus. In the growth of anthropology, we are going to study mainly the growth of tribal studies in India and the growth of village studies or peasant studies in India, and the contribution of individual anthropologists, 18th, 19th and 20th century anthropologists to the growth of anthropology in India. For your examination purpose, factors influencing growth and structure of the population is important. Guha's classification and Risley's classification are important. Linguistic elements are important. From second chapter, all are important. Please remember, even though there are few topics, all are very important for your exam. Even examiners also know that it is difficult to remember the facts. Especially in racial classification and linguistic classifications, there are a number of facts. It is difficult to remember those facts. That's why definitely they will ask questions from these topics. Similarly, here also in the growth of anthropology, in the growth of tribal studies as well as in the growth of village studies, the contributions made by anthropologists in the form of different works are very important. There are many contributions, it is difficult to remember. That's why they will definitely ask questions from these sections. Quantity wise, very less syllabus from these 2 chapters, but very important for your exam. That's why the chances for indirect questions are very less. That's why, and many students commit mistakes here. In order to achieve success in the exam, we have to score well, or we have to avoid mistakes where other students commit mistakes. That's why let us discuss these topics one after another today. First, let us discuss chapter 2, demographic profile of India. In the demographic profile of India, the first topic is factors influencing the growth and structure of the population. The growth and structure of the population. What are the factors? First one is improvement in medical knowledge. Improvement in medical knowledge and its application. In the olden days, because of epidemics means sudden outbreak of disease, Because of epidemics like cholera, typhoid, tuberculosis, millions of people died. That means because of those epidemics, there was a very heavy death toll. Now, because of improvements in the field of medical knowledge and its application, the deaths because of epidemics were controlled, and at the same time, the deaths because of complicated diseases, heart problems, kidney problems, brain problems, they were also controlled. That's why the death rate was decreased, that's why the population was increased. Second one is improvement in transportation facilities. Improvement in transportation facilities. Because of the improvement in transportation facilities, the patients are able to reach the hospitals or healthcare centers as early as possible, especially within the golden hour. That's why we are able to save the lives of many people. That's why the death rate was decreased and the population size was increased. Later, improvements or development in the field of agriculture and industry. Once upon a time, even today also in India, agriculture is mainly monsoon dependent. But the uncertainties because of nature are controlled because of the developments in the field of science and technology. That's why the production was increased, agriculture was developed, the production was increased. Similarly, because of industrial development, because of the many measures taken by the government, we observed industrial development, establishment of many industries. That's why employment avenues were increased. Because of all these things, the income of the people was increased. That's why the people got the confidence that they can feed enough number of people if they produce. That's why again population was increased. Affordability, fine. Ultimately, because of developments in the field of agriculture and industries, affordability was increased. That's why they started producing more children. Certain social factors like universal marriage. In India, marriage is universal phenomenon. It is impossible to escape marriage, especially for females. It is very difficult to avoid the marriage. And at the same time, that means because of universal marriage, everyone started participating in reproduction. That's why they started producing children. And at the same time, child marriage. Because of child marriages, the females are pushed into active reproductive life at an earlier point of time. That's why their active reproductive span was increased. That's why the fertility loss, that means the ability of a female to produce children, was increased. That's why population size was increased. Apart from this, other social attitudes. What are those social attitudes? Considering children as the old age pension. Feeling of dependency on the God. In Telugu, there is one popular saying, Naru posnava neeru poyikpotada. Here, because of dependency on the God, they started producing children. Let us produce the children. Later, the God will take care of. And apart from these factors, environment. Our environment is basically tropical environment. In tropical environment, females come to sexual maturity at an earlier point of time. Sex urge is also more. Because of these two factors, there will be more participation in reproductive life. That's why there will be production of more number of children. Apart from this, lack of conscious family planning. Especially if you go to rural areas, the existence of availability of different varieties of family planning practices is not known to the people there. Even in case of existence, social stigma, prohibition from inner side. Even though people know about the use of condoms to prevent the contraception, the people, they face it difficulty. Inner prohibition will be there to ask or to purchase condoms from medical shops. Inner prohibition, that stigma is there. That's why because of lack of awareness on the availability of family planning practices, because of stigma, and because of unawareness on the use of different varieties of family planning devices, all these are responsible. Apart from this, government also did not implement the family planning program. Even though government resorted to family planning program under 5-year plans, government did not implement in the first 3 decades. That's why apathy of the government is also important. At that point of time, government did not realize the consequences of oversized population. That's why government did not implement the family planning programs. Then lack of entertainment facilities. Lack of entertainment facilities in the rural areas, especially because of lack of entertainment facilities, people often found their entertainment in sex play. Whenever they found entertainment in sex play, along with the presence of these factors, because of lack of consciousness and the family planning, it results in the production of the children. Relatively, after the establishment of British rule in India, we enjoyed relatively peaceful conditions. Because of peaceful conditions, the death toll because of number of wars was decreased. That's why relatively peaceful conditions. All these are the factors that are responsible for influencing the growth and structure of the population. Improvement in medical knowledge and its application, improvements in the transportation, development in the field of agriculture and industries, social factors like universal marriage and child marriage, social attitudes like considering children as old age pension, feeling of dependency on the God, and especially I forgot to tell you, joint family system also. Whenever there is joint family system, then there will be enough number of people to take care of the children whenever they are produced. And tropical environment, lack of conscious family planning, apathy of the government in implementing family planning program, lack of entertainment facilities in the rural areas, and peaceful conditions. These are responsible for influencing the growth and structure of the population. This is very easy question. In the examination, try to write answers in the form of subheadings. Whenever all these points which I have given have to be mentioned in the answer sheet in the form of subheadings, then examiner can easily appreciate. Now let us discuss the second topic, that is racial elements in India. Racial elements in India means we are going to discuss racial classification. What is meant by race? Race is nothing but a group of population characterized by the presence of a set of similar physical characteristics. A set of similar physical characteristics. In the examination also mentioned like this. Whenever you are writing answer with respect to any concept relating to races, in second paper use this definition. In the first paper, in physical anthropology, we are going to use a different definition from the biological perspective. From the genetical perspective, we are going to use a different definition, but in paper 2 you have to use this definition. A race is nothing but a group of population characterized by the presence of a set of similar physical characteristics. That is the meaning or definition. With regard to the racial elements in India, we have difference of opinion among our anthropologists. That's why different anthropologists propose different definitions. Different classifications. Out of those classifications, Risley's classification and Guha's classification. Guha's classification and Risley's classification are important for your exam. Guha's classification and Risley's classification. According to Guha, there are 6 racial elements. They are negritos, proto-australoids, Mongoloids, Mediterraneans, Western brachycephals, and Nordics or Nordic element. Let us discuss all these characters one after another. Negritos means everyone is well aware of the characteristics of negritos. They are black colored people, short statured people. That's why dark colored skin, short statured people. Please remember, in the examination you need not to give explanation for the presence of different characters. In physical anthropology, depending upon the requirement, you have to give explanation. Here just mention the physical characteristics. For your easy understanding, for remembering them so easily, I may give explanation. But you need not to give the explanation in the examination. Only in first paper, that too depending upon the requirement, you have to give explanation. Then dolichocephalic head, with bulbous forehead, then platyried nose, brains of flat and broad nose, scanty hair over the body. Negative elements can be seen in tropical environment. In the tropical environment, to facilitate the flow of heat from the body into the environment. Actually, heat flows from the region of high concentration to the region of low concentration. That's why heat energy enters into our body from the environment. But excess amount of heat has to be removed from our body. That's why there are different mechanisms. Broad nose, if you have broad nose, then more amount of heat can be removed from our body through the exhaled air. Scanty hair acts as an insulating layer. If less amount of hair is there, more amount of heat can be removed from our body. Then woolly hair. These are the important characteristics. In Tamil, there is one comedian in Tamil movies by name Senthil. If you remember that person, you can remember these characteristics. Dark color, short stature, dolichocephalic head with a bulbous forehead, platyried nose, scanty hair, woolly hair. Scanty hair over the body and over the skull, the hair is woolly hair. With respect to this element, we can come across these characteristics in few groups in South India. They are carders, irulars, Polians or Polians, and primitive tribes of Wayanad. These are the representatives. Try to give a simple answer in the examination. Don't complicate. Don't try to remember each and every characteristic of each and every racial element. It's not possible. And that too, you will commit definitely mistakes. That's why to avoid it, we have to remember the specific characteristics. Now, let us discuss the second racial element. The second racial element also, that means the proto-australoids. Proto-australoids also have the same characteristics like that of negritos. The only difference is hair. The proto-australoids have wavy hair instead of woolly hair. Proto-australoids have wavy hair instead of woolly hair. If you remember this point, that is sufficient. In the examination also, if you want to mention, you can mention like that. Proto-australoids have similar characteristics like that of negritos. The only difference is they have wavy hair instead of woolly hair. Or you can write like this, you can write the same characteristics, but in place of woolly hair you can mention wavy hair, but underline wavy hair. Some students generally they used to ask, sir, what are the points that are to be underlined? Here, if you write the characteristics of negritos and proto-australoids, with respect to negritos, underline woolly hair. With respect to proto-australoids, underline wavy hair. And the proto-australoid element can be seen in the tribes of central India. You can write the name of any tribe. If you come to Andhra Pradesh, Chenchus. If you go to central India, Gonds, Kons, Santals, Baigas, you can write any tribe of central India. Or if you cannot remember all those names, simply mention the tribes of central India. Then the next one is Mongoloids. Here, with respect to Mongoloids, I am giving here Mongoloids. They have certain general characteristics. They have yellowish skin or yellowish tinge in the skin or yellowish green. After that, straight and scanty hair, straight and scanty hair. Over the body. Then oblique eyes with epicanthic fold. Oblique eyes with epicanthic fold. Underline this point. In negative element, you have to underline woolly hair. In proto-australoids, you have to underline wavy hair. In Mongoloids, underline this oblique eyes with epicanthic fold. If you want to underline, you can underline yellowish skin also. Actually, Mongoloids entered into India through different routes and at different points of time. That's why the Mongoloids are again divided into two groups. They are Paleo-Mongoloids and Tibeto-Mongoloids. Paleo-Mongoloids have a round face. Tibeto-Mongoloids have elongated face. You can remember like this, T for tall. Tibeto-Mongoloids have elongated face, whereas Paleo-Mongoloids have a round face. Again, the Paleo-Mongoloids are divided into two varieties. See, in the Paleo-Mongoloids, some people have long head, some people have broad head. This in the superior part. That's why the Paleo-Mongoloids are divided into long-headed Paleo-Mongoloids, broad-headed Paleo-Mongoloids. But in case of Tibeto-Mongoloids, they have long and broad, elongated face and elongated head. Now, here the representatives of long-headed Paleo-Mongoloids are Limbus of Nepal, then Sima Nagas of Assam, whereas the broad-headed Paleo-Mongoloids are there in the West Bengal region, West Bengal and Sikkim region. They are Lepchas of Kalimpong. Even in Bangladesh also we can come across this element, especially in the Chittagong Hills. The tribal people of the Chittagong Hills are the representatives of broad-headed Paleo-Mongoloids. Here, with respect to Tibeto-Mongoloids, the name itself indicates they are from Tibet. That's why the Tibetans of Bhutan and Sikkim. These are the representatives. For easily remembering, I am giving this classification. Try to present your answer as simple as possible with respect to complicated topics. The next element is Mediterranean element. With respect to Mediterraneans, they have dolichocephalic head, and mainly moderate to elongated nose, but mainly elongated nose, that means long and narrow nose, that is called leptorine nose. Again, these people are divided into three elements. They are Paleo-Mediterraneans, right, Paleo-Mediterraneans, then Mediterraneans, then Oriental. So it's not possible for us to remember all the characteristics. We are going to remember the stature, that means height, then skin color, after that hair over the body, then nose, and finally representatives. Here in this class, some of my old students are there. They may feel bored, but kindly tolerate us for a few seconds. See, the Mediterranean elements, actually I am not going to discuss the detailed theories, but generally we believe that in the process of human evolution, human beings came into existence in the African region. They migrated from this African continent towards Europe continent. During that process, nowadays we have transportation facilities. In the olden days, all these facilities were not there. That's why in the beginning some people settled here, later some people settled here, later some people settled here. Those people who settled here, in due course of time, they got a set of physical characteristics. That means they were transformed into one race. They are called Paleo-Mediterraneans. Those people who were settled here, they are called true Mediterraneans. And those people who settled here, they are Oriental. But in due course of time, all those people migrate to different parts of the world. Here, when we proceed, here equator will be there. When we proceed from the equator towards the polar region, we can come across gradual increase in their length. See, in the equator region, pygmies are there. Pygmies are short statured. Here, because of comfortable environment, tall stature. Here, medium stature. That's why in Paleo-Mongoloids, medium stature is there. In true Mediterraneans, tall stature is there. Forget about the third one. We are going to discuss these two comparatively. And here hot environment, here cold environment. That's why here they have dark color, here they have light color. Here in dark, here hot environment, less hair should be there, that means scanty hair over the body. Here abundant hair over the body. With respect to nose, here platyrrhine nose. With respect to Mediterraneans, leptorrhine nose. Leptorrhine nose means elongated nose. And with respect to third element, the third element is similar to second element. That means tall stature is there, light color skin is there, abundant hair is there, leptorrhine nose is there. Then you may get confusion, sir, both are having same characteristics. But in the Oriental, even though they have leptorrhine nose like that of Mediterraneans, this nose is more convex. If they have nose like this, here they have nose like this. They have elongated nose but with more convexity. Leptorrhine nose with more convexity. Who are the representatives of Paleo-Mediterraneans? Telugu Brahmins, Tamil Brahmins, and Nayars. Telugu Brahmins, Tamil Brahmins, and Nayars are the representatives of Paleo-Mediterraneans. With respect to true Mediterraneans, Nambudri Brahmins, Allahabad Brahmins, Bengali Brahmins, even the Maratha ladies of Indore, they also come under the category of true Mediterraneans. With respect to Oriental, we can come across Oriental element in India in the Pathans and Chettis of Punjab. If you have this table, you can easily remember the characteristics. Only with respect to certain characteristics, we are going to distinguish them. That too, I have given one logic. Here warm environment, here cold environment, accordingly the differences. Now let us discuss Western brachycephals. The name itself indicates brachy means broad, cephal means head. These are the broad-headed individuals. Why the name Western? Why the name Western brachycephals? On the eastern side there are some brachycephals. Yes, you are correct. Who are those eastern brachycephals? Broad-headed Paleo-Mongoloids. In Paleo-Mongoloids we have one element broad-headed. That's why to distinguish we use this term Western brachycephals. Western brachycephals are the people who are living in the western part of India and they are characterized by the presence of broad heads. Here in Western brachycephals also they are divided into three elements. They are alpinoid, dinaric, and arminoid. Alpinoid, dinaric, and arminoid. Here also we are going to study them comparatively. One is stature, second one is color, third one is hair, fourth one is nose, and finally representatives. Alpinoid, the name itself indicates Alps environment. Certain people were settled in the Alps environment. In due course of time, they migrated from that place to different parts of the world. In those parts, India is one part. Here, because of mountain environment, that means cold environment is there. But here, please remember, in mountain regions, there will be more gravitational pull. That's why even though there is cold environment, height is not expressed to the maximum possible extent. That's why here medium stature will be there. Alpinoid, here medium stature will be there. With respect to color, light color, skin, hair, abundant hair because of cold environment. Then nose, leptorine nose. Second element, please remember opposite characteristics. Medium, here long stature, tall stature, dark color, especially eyes and hair are dark and the hair is scanty. Please remember, with respect to Western brachycephals, don't apply our contradictory classification. Nose is leptorine in all the people. nose is leptorine. Previously we have discussed in Mediterraneans classification 3 groups. First and second groups have contradictory characters. Here also we have almost same contradictory characters, but remember scientifically, because of mountain environment more gravitational pull, that's why height is not expressed to the maximum possible extent. Then with respect to nose, all the people having leptorine nose. In Armenoid, the same characteristics like that of Dinaric. Wherever we divide a particular racial element into 3 groups, in Mediterraneans we divide them into 3 groups. In Western Brachycephals we divide them into 3 groups. In those conditions, the third group is similar to second group. Here, tall stature, dark color skin, scanty hair over the body, leptorine nose. Then you may get confusion. Here leptorine nose, here leptorine nose, here leptorine nose. In the previous case, we have discussed that the third group has more convexity than the second group. But here, remember, all are having leptorine nose only. But here, just leptorine nose. Here, more convexity than alpinoid group. Here, still more convexity. That means maximum convexity. All are having leptorine nose only, but the leptorine nose of Dinarics is more convex than the leptorine nose of alpinoids. The leptorine nose of armenoids is more convex than the leptorine nose of Dinaric. Now, let us discuss examples or representatives. With respect to alpinoids, we can come across the representatives of the alpinoid mainly in Gujarat region and Bengal region. Baniyas in Baniyas of Gujarat, Khatiyas of Kathiawar region of Gujarat, then Kayasthas of Bengal. These are the representatives. If you are not able to remember, try to write one example only, but don't write mistakes. Don't give wrong examples, you will be penalized. Then with respect to Dinaric element, we can come across here the Dinaric element in Bengali Brahmins and Kannada Brahmins. That means Canaries Brahmins or Kannada Brahmins. The Armenoid element can be seen in Parsis. The Armenoid element can be seen in Parsis. Okay, this is about Western Brachycephal element. And the next one is Nordic element. With respect to Nordic element means these are the people who migrated to India from the Russian region. Now the Russian president is well known to all the aspirants, Vladimir Putin. If you remember Vladimir Putin, you can write all the characteristics. The only point that you have to remember is these are tall statured people. Vladimir Putin is not tall stature, he is a short person, but these are having tall stature, light color skin, that means fair complexion, light color skin, then abundant hair over the body because of cold environment, very good muscular body. Here the point that you have to remember is bluish tinge in the eyes. Underline this point, bluish tinge in the eyes. This is very, very important. They are tall stature, light colored individuals with bluish tinge in the eyes. Here the Nordic element can be seen here and there sporadically in the northwestern part of India, especially in Punjab and Rajasthan. There are some groups like red Kafirs, Kahos, etc. Just mention that Nordic element is seen sporadically, that means here and there in the Punjab Rajasthan region. This is about Goa's classification. If you remember the characteristics of different elements, that means negatives, Protozoites, Mongoloids, Mediterraneans, Western Brachycephals and Nordics, you can easily remember Risley's classification. According to Risley, in India there are 7 racial elements. See. The native people in India before the Aryan invasion are Dravidians. Aryans came to India as conquerors and they settled. Aryans settled in the northwest region. In due course of time they migrated towards the eastern part. That's why here Indo-Aryans. Then Mongoloids came from the Mongoloid region. That's why they were here. In this region Indo-Aryans, in this region Dravidians, in this Mongoloids. In due course of time there was interaction between these people. That's why Indo-Aryans, Indo-Dravidians, a new group. Because of the mating between the Indo-Aryans and Dravidians, a new group came into existence, Indo-Dravidians. Similarly, Mongolo-Dravidians. Similarly, Seka people, Sekas, in your history you will come across Sekas. Seka people, they came to India from the western part, they settled in Gujarat and Maharashtra. Here we can come across, and the Sekas, because of mating with Dravidians, a new group came into existence. They are Scytho-Dravidians. And apart from, actually when Risley conducted this survey on the presence of racial elements in India, at that point of time we did not get independence also. That's why he studied the Pakistani population also. Here there is one element, that is Turco-Iranian. Risley was the census commissioner. That's why he made a detailed survey of the population. In the Baluchistan region and Afghanistan region, there was one racial element, that is Turco-Iranian. That's why according to Risley, total how many elements are there? Indo-Aryans, Dravidians, Mongoloids, Aryo-Dravidians. So Indo-Aryo-Dravidians you can write in any manner. Indo-Dravidians, Aryo-Dravidians, Mongolo-Dravidians, Scytho-Dravidians and Turco-Iranian. These are the 7 elements. Indo-Aryans, then Dravidians, Mongoloids, then Aryo-Dravidians or Indo-Dravidians, Aryo-Dravidians mentioned like this, then Mongolo-Dravidians, then Scytho-Dravidians, and then Turco-Iranians. See, Indo-Aryans, we can come across Indo-Aryans in the Punjab, Haryana and Jammu and Kashmir region. Especially Rajputs, Jats and Khatris. Indo-Aryans, you know the characteristics of Aryans, they are tall statured, white color. For every easy understanding, I can use one term, V-shaped body, that means a broad shoulders, very well developed musculature and slim bodies. They can be seen in the Rajputs, Jats and Khatris. Then Dravidian characteristics and negative element characteristics are same. Here the only thing that you have to remember is representatives. All the tribes of Central India and South India. You can write any name or you can write simply this. Then Mongoloids, you know the characteristics of Mongoloids. Here Mongoloid elements can be seen in the northern part of India, especially in the Sikkim region. In the Sikkim region, Lepchas, Bhutias, Kinnets in Uttarakhand region. These are in the Sikkim and Bhutan region. Now, Aryo-Dravidians. Previously, I have drawn the diagram. Here Indo-Aryans, here Mongoloids, here Dravidians. Then Aryo-Dravidians, here Mongolo-Dravidians here. Aryo-Dravidians here means they are there in Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. Mongolo-Dravidians are there in the West Bengal region and Orissa region. Okay, here in these elements we can come across admixture of the characteristics of both the elements. In Aryo-Dravidians we can come across the characters of Aryans as well as Dravidians. In Mongolo-Dravidians you can come across the characteristics of Mongoloids as well as Dravidians. But please remember, in the higher caste we can come across this Aryan element or Mongoloid element. In the lower caste you can come across Dravidian elements in those regions. Then Scytho-Dravidians. Actually the representatives of the Scytho-Dravidians are nothing but Marathas. Here with respect to Mongolo-Dravidians and Aryo-Dravidians, just mention the regions where they are there. Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, here West Bengal and Orissa. Here in Brahmins and lower caste you can come across these elements. Now, with respect to Scytho-Dravidians, if you remember the physical characteristics of Shivaji, you can write the characteristics. They are having medium to short stature. Then long head, medium nose, short stature, and abundant hair over the body. Scytho-Dravidians you have to remember, if you come from top to bottom, head long, nose medium, leg short, that's why short stature. Then abundant hair. The representatives of Scytho-Dravidians are nothing but Marathas. Turco-Iranians, they are like Indo-Aryans. They have white color, elongated stature, but the nose is moderate. The only difference between Indo-Aryans and the Turco-Iranians is, here in Indo-Aryans we have left-to-right nose. Here in Turco-Iranians we have moderate nose or medium nose. If you remember Guha's classification, you can remember Risley's classification easily. Now, it may be boring, but in the examination you have to write these facts. Then only you will get good marks. Now, the question is, in the examination, question may be asked directly. One is Guha's classification. Explain Guha's classification. First question. Second one is explain Risley's classification. Guha's classification and Risley's classification. Direct questions. Third question is define race and discuss the racial diversity in India. Racial diversity in India. Racial diversity means in India we have number of races. Then you can explain the racial diversity either by using Guha's classification or by using Risley's classification. Now the question may, most of the times questions will be asked like this: Indian population represents rich biogenic variability. A rich biogenic variability. Indian population represents a rich biogenic variability. Discuss. I told you in the beginning, what is the definition of race? Race is nothing but a group of population characterized by the presence of a particular set of physical characteristics. A particular set of physical characteristics. Now, whenever a particular race has a particular set of physical characteristics, each and every character is controlled by some genes. Say for example, A is controlled by A gene, B is controlled by this gene, C, D, E. That means whenever we have a particular set of physical characteristics, inside our body we have a particular set of genes. Like that, inside each and every race there will be a particular set of genes. That's why whenever there is racial diversity, we can say that there is genetic diversity also. That's why that is called biogenic variability. This is only for your understanding. In the examination, you have to write like this. In the examination, most of the times questions will be asked like this: Indian population represents rich biogenic variability. Comment or discuss or explain. They will ask like this. Then you have to write racial classification only, but you have to write like this: the biogenic variability manifests in the form of racial diversity. Write this sentence in the beginning. Biogenic variability is manifested in the form of racial diversity. In India, we have number of races, which can be discussed as follows. Then put subheadings: negative element, proto-asteroid element, then Mongoloid element, Mediterranean element, Western brachycephal element, Nordic element, or you can take the help of Risley's classification also, and mention their representatives also. And finally conclude that as there are many races in India, we can conclude that India is rich in biogenic variability. Why? Because racial diversity is the manifestation of biogenic variability. Most of the times questions will be asked like this only. If they want to ask short answer question on the racial classification, they will ask the characteristics of any one particular racial element: negative element, Mediterranean element, Mongoloid element, Western brachycephal element, Nordic element, like that. Don't bunk in the examination that there are only few points. If your answer is correct, they have to allot marks. Then linguistic classification in the material, in almost all the textbooks, those charts are there with regard to families of languages. In India, all the languages are classified into 4 families. They are Indo-European languages or Indo-Aryan languages, Dravidian languages, Austric languages, and Sino-Tibetan languages. Indo-European family, Dravidian family, Austric family, and Sino-Tibetan family. And mug up those charts. You have to practice. There is nothing to explain. That's why I am not going to explain linguistic classification. Now let us discuss fourth chapter, growth of anthropology. Growth of anthropology in India. Growth of anthropology in India. and the contributions made by 18th, 19th and 20th century anthropologists for the growth of anthropology in India. I am going to give one chart. That chart is very important for answering different questions. Entire growth of anthropology in India concept can be summarized in this chart. The growth of anthropology in India can be studied under two broad heads, that is growth of tribal studies. Growth of tribal studies. Once upon a time, anthropology included study of only tribals. In due course of time, the scope of anthropology was widened. That's why we started studying other societies, especially villages. That's why later the growth of village studies were observed with respect to growth of anthropology in India. Whether it is the tribal studies development or village studies development, the growth of those studies can be divided into three phases. With respect to tribal studies, formative phase, that means beginning, then constructive phase, significant insights were made, and analytical phase. Here the beginnings were made, here good studies were made, good data was collected, here they started analyzing the data. So the growth of tribal studies can be studied under three broad stages. They are formative stage, constructive stage and analytical stage. Similarly, with respect to village studies also we can come across formative stage, constructive stage or phase, and finally analytical phase. Analytical phase. In India, the growth of anthropology was started with the establishment of Asiatic Society of Bengal by William Jones. The Asiatic Society of Bengal was established in the year 1774. That in the beginning, the study of anthropology is nothing but a study of tribal societies. That's why the tribal studies were started in India first. That too, the growth of tribal studies were started with the establishment of Asiatic Society of Bengal. Later, anthropology got its recognition because of its incorporation in the sociology curriculum in the Bombay University in the year 1990. That is considered as another significant milestone. Then we got independence. That is another milestone. See, according to different anthropologies, the timings of these stages vary. That's why don't bother about the years. Slight variation will be there. That's why with respect to tribal studies, we can say that the formative phase existed from 1774 to 1919. Constructive phase is from 1919 to 1947. Analytical phase is from 1947 onwards. Some people used to say that it is from 1950. Immediately after independence, drastic changes were not made. Similarly, with respect to village studies, the first village study was made by a person by name Henry Mine. He is a British administrative officer. In the year 1861, he published a book by name Ancient Law. That was the beginning of the village studies. Later, in the olden days, our anthropologists, they relied mainly on different sources to get the data from the villages. But later, our anthropologists started doing first-hand research. That means directly going to the villages and they started studying the villages. That's why they are called empirical studies. Empirical studies were started in the year 1960. In Madras University, there is an anthropologist by name Gilbert Slater. Under the guidance of Gilbert Slater, his students went to villages and studied the villages, and their findings were published in the form of some South Indian villages in the year 1916. That's why 1916 is considered as another significant milestone in the development of village studies. Later, independence, 1947. That's why, with respect to village studies, formative stage is from 1861 to 1916. Constructive phase is from 1916 to 1947, and analytical phase was from 1947 onwards. Okay. Now, please remember, after independence, the contacts of Indian anthropologists with American anthropologists were increased. That's why we can come across the influence of American anthropologists with respect to Indian anthropology after independence. Before independence, India was ruled by Britishers. That's why in India, anthropological research was conducted by many British anthropologists and other European anthropologists. That's why in the first two phases, that means in the formative phase and constructive phase, the growth was contributed by European anthropologists, especially the British anthropologists. In the first two phases, the contribution is mainly from British anthropologists. Whereas in the analytical phase, the contribution is mainly from American anthropologists. Now, come to village studies. In the village studies, in the constructive phase, number of anthropologists, British anthropologists contributed for the growth of anthropology in India. But before independence, for anthropologists at the time of independence, an anthropologist by name William Weiser. In the constructive phase, one anthropologist by name William Weiser, he contributed a lot for the understanding of village life by his Judge Money system. Please remember, the only American anthropologists contributed for the growth of village studies in the constructive phase. In the constructive phase, the contribution is by the British anthropologists. But the only American anthropologists who contributed for the constructive phase of the village studies is nothing but William Weiser. Remember this point. Now, in your material, and we are going to discuss also now, we are going to discuss formative phase, constructive phase, analytical phase here, formative phase, constructive phase and analytical phase here. Now the questions can be in different ways. First question is, discuss the growth of anthropology in India. Simple question. Growth of anthropology in India. The second question is the growth of tribal studies in India. Third one is the growth of village studies or peasant studies. Direct questions. Village studies or peasant studies in India. Explain or discuss the growth of anthropology in India. Explain or discuss the growth of tribal studies in India. Explain or discuss the growth of village studies or peasant studies in India. Direct questions. You have to remember these facts and you have to write answer. Now the question can be asked like this. Discuss the contributions made by British anthropologists. The contributions made by British anthropologists to the growth of anthropology in India. Then you have to write like this. British anthropologists contributed for the growth of anthropology in India by contributing towards the growth of tribal studies as well as the village studies. Then put a subheading, the contribution of British anthropologists for the growth of tribal studies. Then write about formative phase, constructive phase. Then puts another subheading, village studies, write about formative phase, constructive phase, but avoid the name of William Weiser because he is the American anthropologist. Now another question is, discuss the contribution by American anthropologists for the growth of India. Then you have to write, after independence, the contacts of Indian anthropologists with American anthropologists were increased. That's why the contribution of American anthropologists to the growth of anthropology in India can be seen mainly in the analytical phase. Then put subheadings, the contribution of, whenever you are writing contribution of American anthropologists to the growth of anthropology in India, first write their contribution to the village studies. Why? Because they contributed mainly for the growth of village studies. Then put subheading, constructive phase. The American anthropologists contributed for the constructive phase of village studies, but write only one name, that is William Weiser. After that, write the contributions made by American anthropologists in the form of analytical phase. After that, analytical phase of the tribal studies. Understood? Whenever the question is asked on the contribution of American anthropologists for the growth of anthropology in India, you have to write the analytical phase of tribal studies, constructive phase of village studies, but in the constructive phase only one name, that is nothing but William Weiser, and then analytical phase of village studies. Okay, this is very very important. You have to remember this exception. Then another question is, discuss the contributions made by 18th and 19th century anthropologists. 18th and 19th century anthropologists. 18th and 19th century anthropologists to the growth of anthropology in India. 20th century means 1900 to 2000. Now 18th and 19th means before 1900. Before 1900 means, see here, formative phase and constructive phase. Formative phase, only formative phase, sorry. With respect to tribal studies, you have to write about formative phase. With respect to village studies, you have to write about formative phase. The contribution of 18th and 19th century anthropologists are mainly towards the development of formative phase in the tribal studies and formative phase in the village studies. If the question is asked, discuss the contributions made by 20th century anthropologists, then you have to write the constructive phase of the tribal studies, analytical phase of the tribal studies. Similarly, in the village studies, constructive phase and analytical phase. Understood? This classification is important. Based on this classification, if you know this classification, questions may be asked in any manner, you can write answer to those questions. See, growth of anthropology question, you can write. Growth of tribal studies, you can write. Growth of village studies or peasant studies, you can write. British anthropologist contribution, you can write. American anthropologist contribution, you can write. Contribution of 18th and 19th century anthropologists, you can write. The contribution of 20th century anthropologists, you can write. Now, let us discuss the growth of tribal studies and village studies briefly. Growth of tribal studies, first let us discuss. Here, formative phase, then constructive phase, and analytical phase. With respect to tribal studies, formative phase is more important. It doesn't mean that they are not important. Here, formative phase started with the establishment of Asiatic Society of Bengal in the year 1774. After that, many books were published in many genres. Later, ethnographies and monographs, some general books on different tribes were published. After that, monographs, detailed accounts about a specific tribe were also published. That's why you have to remember general books, some monographs, and some of the monographs were recognized as excellent monographs. Excellent monographs. General books, with respect to general books, we have two anthropologists, R.G. Latham. He published a book by name Ethnography of India. After that, Risley. He published a book by name Tribes and Castes of Bengal. Tribes and Castes of Bengal. With respect to monographs, there are many anthropologists. I will give you a detailed account. They are Briggs. There is one anthropologist by name Briggs. Then he studied a tribe by name Chamars. Briggs wrote a detailed account or monograph on Chamars. Apart from Chamars, other anthropologists, Parry, N.E. Parry, he wrote a monograph on lacquers. Then another person by name Gregson, he wrote a monograph on Mariagons. Then another anthropologist by name Gurdon, he wrote a monograph on causes. And another anthropologist by name Shakespeare, he wrote a monograph on Lushai Kuki clans. And another anthropologist by name Mills, he wrote a monograph on Nagas, Lota Nagas and Rangma Nagas. My students know about the mnemonic. I'll give you one mnemonic for easily remembering all these. To see the first letter, RRB, PZ, GSM. Just I am giving one statement, it is not correct, but for easily remembering. To write RRB exam, PG in GS and mathematics is required. To write RRB exam, PG in GS and mathematics is required. If you remember that statement, then you can at least remember the names of the anthropologists. Then you can, if you practice the names of the monographs written by those anthropologists, you can give as maximum number of examples as possible. R stands for Arjiratham, R stands for Risley, B stands for Briggs, P stands for Parry, G stands for Gregson, another G stands for Gurdon, S stands for Shakespeare, M stands for Mills. Just one mnemonic. Then excellent monographs. 3 monographs were recognized as the model monographs by many anthropologists. They are W.H.R. Rivers. He studied a tribe by name Thodas. The Thodas. Then Ratcliffe Brown. He studied Andaman Islanders. Then Seligman. He studied Vedas of Sri Lanka. Try to remember some general books. Formative phase was started with the establishment of Asiatic Society of Bengal. From then onwards, many British administrators, travelers, historians, they studied different tribal societies and published some general books on ethnology or ethnography and some monographs. With respect to general books, Ethnography of India by R.J. Latham, Tribes and Castes of Bengal by Risley, and some monographs and excellent monographs. These 3 you must write in the exam. W.H.R. Rivers, he published a detailed monograph on the Thodas. Ratcliffe Brown published a detailed monograph on Andaman Islanders. Seligman published a detailed monograph on the Vedas of Sri Lanka. With respect to constructive phase, you have to remember the years 1919, 1921, 1938. With respect to, in the year 1919, actually anthropology is a branch of sociology. That's why anthropology was incorporated in the sociology syllabus in the Bombay University in the year 1919. That's why it is considered as the beginning of the constructive phase. Later in the year 1921, a separate department of anthropology was established in Kolkata University. That's why many anthropologists, they reached Kolkata University, they started conducting systematic field work and in order to know about the social organization among the tribals. At that point of time, many anthropologists like M.N. Srinivas, D.N. Majumdar, many anthropologists, they conducted field work. Then In the year 1938, there was a joint session between Indian Science Congress and the British Association of Science. Here in the Indian Science Congress, there were discussions about anthropology also. Anthropology was also considered as science. That's why in the Indian Science Congress session of 1938, but because it is the silver jubilee occasion of the Indian Science Congress, on the occasion of silver jubilee of Indian Science Congress in the 1938, they invited the British anthropologists. In that Indian Science Congress session, the Indian anthropologists and the British anthropologists had detailed discussions. Then the British anthropologists gave a lot of insights with regard to how to conduct research. Then under the influence of the British anthropologists, many Indian anthropologists conducted the research and published many books also. Here some of the books published because of the research conducted by Indian anthropologists under the influence of European anthropologists are nothing but Marriage and Family in Mysore, Marriage and Family in Mysore. It was published by M.N. Srinivas. Another book, The Changing House of the Tribal People in the Orissa region, The Changing House of Singhbhum by D.N. Majumdar. Then the Hindu method of tribal absorption, the Hindu method of tribal absorption by N.K. Bose. Just you have to remember these three names. With respect to constructive phase, you have to remember 1919 because anthropology was included in the sociology curriculum. Again in the year 1921, separate department of anthropology was established in Kolkata University. After 1938, under the influence of European anthropologists, Indian anthropologists made significant theoretical insights into the social organization among the tribals. Some of the important works produced during that period. Apart from that, some of the European anthropologists came to India and they settled in India in order to carry out the tribal studies. Out of those anthropologists or out of those European people, Verrier Elvin and Heimendorf. They are important. Verrier Elvin studied the tribes of central India and he studied the problems of the tribes of the central India. Heimendorf studied the tribal people around the Hyderabad region. You have to remember these 1919, 1921, 1938, these three books and the contributions made by Verrier Elvin and Heimendorf. And the analytical phase, by the time the analytical phase is started in the tribal studies, the focus of the anthropology was shifted to the village studies. That's why many anthropologists concentrate on the study of villages. That's why here the contribution is very less. But in this phase, many American anthropologists came to India and they settled in India along with their students. And at that point of time, they infused systematic methods of scientific endeavor with regard to how to carry out a research. That is the significant insight. This is about the growth of tribal studies. Now let us discuss the growth of village studies. The growth of village studies. In the growth of village studies also, formative phase, then constructive phase and analytical phase. In the formative phase, you have to remember four names. One is Henry Maine. He published a book by name Ancient Law with regard to inheritance of land and revenue settlements. Then after that, Baden-Powell, He wrote a book by name Indian Village Community. Indian Village Community. In this book also different land tenure systems were discussed. Then Lal Bihari Dev, the first Indian anthropologist to conduct village studies. Lal Bihari Dev, he painted a book. He painted the village life in a book by name Bengal Peasant Life. Then George Grierson, another British administrative officer, he wrote a book by name Bihar Peasant Life. All these books or all these works are with respect to villages only. These are the beginnings with respect to the village studies in India. With respect to constructive phase, first empirical studies. After that, the contributions, the interference or the interference by or intervention by Gandhiji, Mahatma Gandhiji. Then William Weiser's contribution. You have to remember these 3 points. With respect to empirical studies, I told you Gilbert Slater's students. Gilbert Slater's students published 12 books in the name of some South Indian villages. And there was another person by name H. Mann. He published a book by name Land and Labor in Deccan Villages. These two are the important empirical studies. At this point of time in India, non-cooperation movement was going. That's why Gandhi drew the attention of anthropologists towards the economic aspects of the village life. He encouraged many people to study the economic aspects of the village life. That's why under the influence of the Gandhiji, many anthropologists studied the economic aspects of the villages. That's why some important books or some important works were produced at that point of time. They are Village Uplift in India, Remaking of Village India, by Brainy, F.L. Brainy, and Rural Welfare in India, by Sticklands, another European anthropologist. These are the important works. Later, William Weiser contributed for the jazz money system through his book, The Hindu Jazz Money System, another book by name Behind the Mud Walls. You have to remember these 3: empirical studies, then the influence of Gandhiji, and the contribution made by William Weiser. In the formative phase, you have to remember these 4 names. In the constructive phase, you have to remember these 3 categories: empirical studies, influence of Gandhiji, and contribution by William Weiser. Now, let us discuss analytical phase. With respect to analytical phase, I told you after independence, the contacts of Indian anthropologists with American anthropologists were increased. That's why under the influence of American anthropologists, our Indian anthropologists studied the villages and produced some books also. They produced those books or works in such a manner that they have become models for the next generation anthropologists with regard to how to conduct research on the villages. That's why they are called model village studies. After that, some Indian anthropologists studied the Indian villages. That's why the contribution by Indian anthropologists. Later, the contribution by the foreign anthropologists, especially the American anthropologists. In the analytical phase, you have to remember model village studies, contributions by Indian anthropologists, contribution by American anthropologists. In the model village studies, you have to remember 3 model village studies. They are Indian village, India's village, village India. Indian village was produced by S.C. Dubey. India's village was produced by M.N. Srinivas. And Village India was produced by McKim Marriott. Our Indians, they wrote the books with the India name in the beginning. Indian village, India's village. S stands for Srinivas to avoid confusion for easily remembering. Indian village by S.C. Dubey, India's village by M.N. Srinivas, Village India by McKim Marriott. Then write contributions by some Indian anthropologists. In the previous classes, we have discussed the contribution by M.N. Srinivas and the contribution by L.P. Vidyarthi. What are the contributions of M.N. Srinivas? Dominant caste. Then westernization, sanskritization, caste in modern India. These are the different works. L.P. Vidyarthi, sacred complex. Apart from this, if you go to villages, even today also, communication among the village members is on the basis of the caste. Caste influences the communication. That's why caste and communication in the Indian villages was studied by another anthropologist by name D.N. Majumdar. These are some of the contributions. So some of the concepts produced by Indian anthropologists. Similarly, American anthropologists and other foreign anthropologists, they contributed for certain village studies. They are Life in a North Indian Village by Oscar Lewis, Caste and Economic Frontier by F.G. Bailey, Caste and Kinship in Central India by Edwin Mayer, then Economic Development and Social Change in South India by Scarlett Epstein, Village Life in South India by Alan Beals. Like this, some anthropologists contributed for the growth of village studies. If you remember these components, you can easily write answer to these questions. Okay. In the formative phase, you have to remember 4 works: Henry Main's Ancient Law, Baden-Powell's Indian Village Community, Lal Bihari Dev's Bengal Peasant Life, George Grierson, Bihar Peasant Life. After that, in the constructive phase, you have to remember some empirical studies, influence of Gandhiji, William Weiser. In analytical studies, you have to remember some model studies, contributions made by some Indian anthropologists, contribution made by some foreign anthropologists, especially American anthropologists. If you know the growth of tribal studies and the growth of village studies, then if you remember that chart previously which I have given, then you can answer any question from this chapter. Apart from this, in your examination, questions will be asked on the contributions made by individual anthropologists. Contributions made by individual anthropologists. Say for example, M.N. Srinivas. On M.N. Srinivas, questions may be asked like this. In the compulsory question, they may mention like this only, M.N. Srinivas, that's it, for 10 marks. Sometimes they may mention like this, discuss the contributions made by M.N. Srinivas for the growth of anthropology in India. The contributions made by M.N. Srinivas for the growth of anthropology in India. Now, see, here they did not specify anything, simply they mentioned the name of anthropologist. Whenever the name of any anthropologist is mentioned like this in the compulsory question, then write about his early life, that means his academic career and professional career. Put subheadings like this, academic career, then professional career. In the professional career, discuss the important positions held by them and the contributions made by them because of holding those positions, and the important works published. The important works published important positions and important works published. In your answer, these three subheadings must be there: academic career, important positions held, and important works published. Your answer must be in the form of subheadings, then only you will get very good marks. But consider here the question is very specific. Discuss the contributions made by M.N. Srinivas for the growth of anthropology in India. Then you need not write what is academic career, not necessary. Just give brief introduction about M.N. Srinivas. After that, discuss the contributions made by M.N. Srinivas through his different concepts. But you have to discuss in detail the contributions. Say for example, he contributed to the understanding of the concept of dominant caste. Explain something about dominant caste and the findings of M.N. Srinivas. Sanskritization, westernization, caste in modern India. Like this, write something about a particular concept which was developed by that particular anthropologist. Understood? Here they did not specify anything. In such circumstances, your answer must be in the form of these subheadings: academic career, important positions held, and important works published. But here specific answer has to be given, a detailed explanation has to be given. There are number of anthropologists, but some famous anthropologists are there. In our material also, the names of anthropologists and their contributions were mentioned very clearly. Apart from that, the anthropologists who are in news, I will give you the names of the anthropologists and study about those anthropologists also. The names of the anthropologists who are in news in this year as well as in the previous year. These are very, very important. As generally in our anthropology, the examination setters, they used to consider the current events of the past year also as the current events of the present year. In this year exam, they may ask the current events relating to anthropology of the past year also. We have observed number of times. Say for example, if the exam is in 2018, they may ask the current affairs relating to anthropology of 2017. Like that, 1 year before, the current affairs of the past 1 year are very, very important. I will send the names of all those anthropologists and their contribution through the WhatsApp group. But concentrate like this. For your easy understanding, I divided them into different groups. Under each and every category, in tribal studies, formative phase. In formative phase, how to remember. Some general books, monographs, excellent monographs. Then in constructive phase, 1919, 1921, 1938. Contribution by Indian anthropologists and foreign anthropologists. Similarly, in the village studies, formative phase, constructive phase. Formative phase, 4 names and their contributions. Constructive phase, empirical studies, Gandhi's influence and William Weiser's contribution. In the analytical phase, modal studies, contributions made by Indian anthropologists, contributions made by American anthropologists. If you keep on dividing like this, you can easily remember. That's why I divided the contributions into number of sets. Have these structures in your mind so that there will be good flow in the examination. Whenever there is good flow, because of good memory, time will be saved so that more number of questions can be answered, so that the chances of getting more marks will be very, very high in the exam. With this, so far, I have covered 2nd chapter, 3rd chapter, 4th chapter and 5th chapter of paper 2. Except 1st chapter, we covered paper 2 section B in just 3 classes. 20% of the syllabus is covered. I hope this has become very useful for you. Again, after going to room, based with these insights, read again and again. Getting more and more clarity is important. Don't think that I have to learn more and more. At this point of time is not there. Only 2.5 months time is left behind. That's why you have to concentrate on getting clarity. Whatever the points, anyway in the examination there will be choice. That's why whatever the content that we have, on that content we must have very good clarity. That's why practice as maximum number of times as possible. More the practice, very good flow in the examination. More the flow in the examination, there will be more saving of time. More the saving of time, more the questions can be answered, so that the chance of success is high. Okay, I wish you good luck for the tomorrow's exam. Okay, have a nice day. Bye.